Hi, I'm John Niehaus, Director of Program Development for the National Association of Flight Instructors. I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of the NAFI More Right Rudder podcast, the podcast for flight instructors on the go. And today I'm really excited because I have the authors of a brand new column for NAFI Mentor Magazine, and the column's called The Right Seat. Now, if you're not familiar, it is in our January-February edition, so it should be arriving on your doorsteps as this comes out if it hasn't already. And remember, if you're not getting it, you can also find it in the archive on the NAFI members only page. But I'd like to welcome the three authors of this column, Dana McIlwain, Jen Watson, and Josh Watson. So I'm going to make introductions in just a second, but to the three of you, first and foremost, welcome to the podcast. And of course, thanks for putting this article together.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, so a little bit of background, and I don't want to spoil too much because I'm going to make them tell me a little bit about themselves. But Dana has been a prior CFI. She was a CFI for 7 years. That also includes a double I and an MEI. And she's currently an aviation safety inspector in the Sacramento FSDO. So once again, Dana, welcome.
Thank you.
And Jen and Josh are a pair. They are husband and wife, so welcome the two of you. Jen is a CFI, double I, and MEI. She was a CFI for 12 years, former airline pilot, and co-owner of a flight school called Aerodynamic. And Josh is he started flying or started in aviation with the Civil Air Patrol. He's the other co-owner of Aerodynamic Flight School. He's a mechanic and an IA A&P for that matter. And I asked him to tell me something exciting that's going on right now, and he is currently designing aircraft to race at Reno. So that's a super exciting thing I'll make him tell us about a little bit later. So I also asked all three of them to kind of give me just a quick basic tagline or summary for what we're about to talk about. And they said it's basically Dear Abby for pilots, which I'm really intrigued about because I haven't read the article yet myself. So I've heard a lot about it, but I'm excited to learn more. So the three of you, I'm so excited to have you. And Dana, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit more about who you are and how this whole thing came to be.
Well, like you mentioned, I'm currently a safety inspector for the FAA. Before that, worked at a few 141 schools as a flight instructor. Thought I was going to fly for the Air Force, but didn't end up doing that. So went the instructor route instead. And I met Jen through the FAA, actually, renewing her CFI. And we just started chatting about flight training and different things that that we want to improve on. And eventually came down to wanting to help mentor flight instructors all over the nation and wanted to do this column. So we're really excited about it.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Jen, you're next. Tell me a little bit more about you.
Yeah, so I, as you said, I previously flew for the airlines. I went through a 141 school to get there. Ended up in the right seat of a jet with 302 hours, which you could do back then. And so I saw a lot of good things, and I saw a lot of things that I would improve upon. And so when I started my own school, I took a lot of that information with me. And like Dana said, I was renewing my CFI because I got my second NAFI master instructor, and I was renewing it through the FSDO, which is the first time I've done that, and made a wonderful friend out of it. And Dana and I just chatted a lot. I invited her to attend one of our instructor meetings. And so she got to sit in and kind of see how we do things, showed her our syllabus and our stage checks, and she had a lot of good feedback. And, as conversation flows over time, we talked about the many things we read on social media and pieces of very bad advice at times, and some good advice too, and started discussing, how do you give people a good resource where they know where the information is coming from. And one of the things I always tell the instructors and students is, don't tell me the answer, show me where you got the answer. And so we talked a lot about backing up your data and your answers with data.
Oh, well, this is the story about the master CFI bringing you together. I like that. I like that a lot. And finally, Josh, tell us a little bit more about you as well.
Yeah, just full-time aircraft mechanic. We run a shop. We do all our own aircraft, and then we do a few select outside aircraft, just things that are interesting. It really gave me an opportunity to get from start to finish, heavy and light maintenance into GA aircraft. One of the reasons that I was interested in joining on and doing this with these guys is that I see a lot on social media, as we all do, good and bad advice, but how do you weed through it all? And if you have a genuine question, how can you approach somebody and know that you're going to get good advice or a good answer from them? Mm-hmm. And so by having a more formal organization kind of like this, we can give people that want real good quality advice or answers, that resource.
I think that's great. Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, at least from my own history, but also interacting with other instructors, it's always nice to have somebody with a maintenance background, because so many of us instructors don't really understand systems. We know the basics enough to get through the day, but beyond that, it's just hard. So I love having the ability to ask those kinds of questions to somebody who actually knows what they're talking about.
Certainly.
It can be intimidating too as a pilot trying to talk with a maintainer about issues, because it's kind of like when you go into the car, when you're taking your car in and you're saying it makes this noise, and then you have to mimic that noise. So it's nice to have somebody that you can approach and talk to and ask those questions and not feel like you're going to embarrass yourself.
Well, coming from somebody who has embarrassed themselves, I absolutely agree. There have been plenty of times where it's like, this thing won't turn on. And it's like talking to somebody who, specializes in computers. And they're like, well, is the switch on to turn it on? No.
He deals with a lot of that. Yes. You push the intercom button on.
Right. Which is a great confidence builder for your student when the instructor's like, oops, I forgot. So the way Beth, our editor of NAFI Magazine, or Mentor Magazine, the way Beth brought this up to me was kind of that the three of you have your bases covered here. We've got flight school owners, we've got master instructors, we have the FAA perspective, we've got the maintenance perspective. And she was super excited about getting this all together. Now, tell me a little bit more about Dear Abby for Pilots. What do we mean by that?
I think one thing that Jen and I agreed on really early on when we started chatting about flight training is the need for a flight instructor to have a mentor, and how hard it is to find that, especially earning your ratings one day and the next day you may get a student and you really don't know what you're doing yet. So it's hard maybe to find somebody that you can go reliably ask questions. If you have that source, it's amazing, and you can count on that person to give you good advice. But if you don't, then you're kind of lost in the wind. And I think this was kind of our way of putting that mentorship out to a lot of people with a bigger hand, kind of nationwide, where they can come confidently ask questions and get advice from us. And then we also mentioned with Beth that we have a lot of resources outside of the three of us. So I know Jen's got a lot of controller friends. I've got friends that are in the medical field that can help with all sorts of different questions that the pilots and CFIs might come up with.
So guest contributors along with the three of you.
Yes.
Ooh.
Oh, absolutely. There's no group of three people are going to know everything, but it's so much more than that. It's about having the resources. Mm-hmm. And so you instead of just writing answers down, going out, researching, being able to get quality information assembled and then brought back to the person asking the question in an organized manner adds an incredible amount of value. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a value add to people that even don't have questions. Maybe they don't know that they don't know something, but just by reading the column and seeing the questions and the answers can be a value add to people that aren't even submitting questions.
So what kind of questions are you guys looking for?
Anything they can throw at us.
Yes.
Is the broad answer. But we've talked a lot about, we have one that'll be in the column that just came out about instrument currency for the instructor when you're shooting approaches with your students. And so we answered that one in the initial column, anything from, what would you wish you could ask your mechanic? Because I've worked at plenty of flight schools or trained at them where the hangar doors are closed. The mechanic doesn't talk to you. They don't teach you about logbooks. Our big thing, we tried to right all those wrongs. And for us, our maintenance shop is a living classroom, we call it. And go back there, let's show you what everything looks like, how logbooks, how to go through them and make sure it's airworthy. So even advice such as, my maintenance shop won't let me look at logbooks or go see stuff. Is that something I should be concerned about? Is it, the most recent one I saw was, what do you do if a student shows up late? And how do you bill for that? So anything from advice to very specific, detailed knowledge, like how do you log instrument currency is the CFII.
How do you teach a landing? I've seen that so many times on social media and with so many different answers, or even some things I've seen on social media is from a student perspective when an instructor is doing something, or what do I do when my student does insert anything, really? How do I handle this? How do I tackle this? Or my student's just not getting it? Lots of different things we can tackle.
I like that. So it's not just instructional knowledge. It's sometimes interpersonal issues, sometimes, lots of different things. I like that. You don't see that happen very often. A lot of times CFIs can answer, questions, but it kind of ends with the book knowledge. So knowing that you're willing to cover that, I think that's exciting.
It's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
So my other question, one of the things you guys mentioned was that there's a lot of bad advice out there in the ether. Will you be picking out things to sort of debunk as well?
Yes.
I like it.
Yeah, especially like Dana and I've run across, we'll send each other a picture of some, question that gets asked and the, 300 comments, anything from calling the person an idiot to giving them really awful advice, to sometimes people have a really great answer too. And it's how do you weed through all that is the big thing. So if we see any of those really stellar things that might be a very hot topic, those would be interesting things to bring out as well and make it more of a discussion. Where all three of us are kind of giving our input rather than answering as a collective too.
Okay. So what happens if you guys disagree?
It'll show in the article. So it's not, we're not writing one article where one person's typing and we're all kind of giving our voice in there. The article, all three of us will be submitting answers and then it'll be edited together. When you read the article, you'll see how it's kind of edited where you can see each one of our voices kind of coming through and answering and explaining things in different fashion. So I think it's kind of a fun read. It's almost like reading a playwright when you're reading through it. It's kind of fun.
Yeah. So if I'm a NAFI member and I have a question, tell me a little bit about the process of getting my question to you.
Yeah, so if you just email, I think it's rightseat@nafi.org, we get those questions come straight to us. So then the three of us can look at it. If it's, more focused in Josh's arena, then he may be the one that answers. Or if it also includes something with like an FAA topic into it, such as an airworthiness thing, there's a maintenance component, but there's also a legal component. And so you might have both of them answering, or maybe as a collective. So we're going to keep it fluid as to, who it mostly pertains to. Maybe it's all three and it's more advice.
Okay.
And so you get three different pilot perspectives. Or if it's something outside our wheelhouse, it's a question that might be more geared towards an aviation attorney. We've got plenty of those that we work with as well, and who fly with us. And so we can send it out to them, and maybe Dana can chime in as well from all the perspectives. So it's to give you more than just one angle, unless it truly is a pretty black and white question.
Okay. And if they email rightseat@nafinet.org, will they get a response back, or do they have to wait until the magazine comes out to find out?
Magazine.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Bated breath. So And will this article be in every edition? What's your schedule like for how often these are coming out?
I think right now that's kind of the plan, is trying to get it out every issue, unless we don't have any content, then
Okay.
nothing will come out. But the plan is to try to get something out every issue.
Excellent.
Yeah, we're hoping to get a lot of user input. But if we come up a little short on user input, then we can always go to the famous Facebook and pull up some real controversial topics and maybe add some content for that.
Yeah, it's funny. I think I've seen some on the NAFI Facebook page recently, so I'm fairly certain that you won't have trouble finding any of that.
Yeah, it doesn't take long.
So in terms of dream questions, is there anything you're sort of hoping to tackle with these? Any specific items that you really want to have somebody ask you?
So on a daily basis, I mentor over 30 instructors, and they text, call, email, all hours, all days of the week. And I get some really great questions. And some of the ones that I love the most are, that you take a fairly new instructor, and some of my instructors have been there 15 years, but you take a fairly new instructor and like, hey, my student's doing this. How do I handle that? At what point do I can't fly with you anymore? At what point do I try a different instructor? At what point is it me? So there's so much interpersonal relationship. And I often tell my instructors, you kind of have to be a psychologist in this job, because you really are trying to figure out how to relate to somebody, how to get them to open up and be willing to learn. And so questions about, dealing with students or dealing with student issues, or, how do I talk to my student who's doing this? I've seen a lot, and the instructors all come to me for advice. Hey, my student throws up every time we try to learn how to land. Just some random stuff. And you can tell in the beginning, they're very timid about asking, because like most of us, we're embarrassed by what we don't know. And yet to me, it's like, well, of course you don't. You've never seen this before. Why would you be timid about asking? That's what I'm here for. And so to get people to open up and just ask those things, that really takes a lot of experience and a lot of getting to see the things I get to see because of 30 instructors, or more than 30 instructors. Just that dichotomy of experience, dealing with a bunch of different people. And so I'm happy to share that kind of, the wacky students and the challenging students and the ones that finally succeed. And it's, just the best feeling in the world.
I like that. Yeah. So as we start to wind down here a little bit, just to kind of pull a little bit more information about you guys out of here, Jen and Josh, as owners of a flight school, what really gets you energized? What really got you excited about getting into the flight school, and what gets you up in the morning?
It's that ability to make constant improvements. One of the things we try and do, you get up every morning, you go into work, and you try and make one thing better than it was when you got there. And if you can do that, or maybe you can do 100 things better, but if you can make that constant improvement, and you can see that, we took on a lot of challenges when we bought the flight school, and one of the things we've been able to do is look back on where we were and see how far we've come, and the responses from the students and the responses from the employees, and it's that keeps me going every day.
Jen, how about you?
So some of my biggest motivations are coming from the airlines. I flew for Mesa for 4 years, and was one of the few pilots that left and stayed out of the airlines. And the biggest reasons were, I have children and I didn't want to be gone a lot. But I took what I didn't like about a lot of the flying jobs: the lack of control over your schedule, the inflexibility. You're really kind of on call, whether you're corporate or airline. And to me, to be able to take all of that and make our school the opposite. We have completely flexible schedules. Instructor build their own schedule. They want to take 2 weeks off, 3 weeks off. It doesn't matter. That's totally up to them. And to be able to control and give people those different ways of having a flying job that's not so burdensome, that I think deters a lot of pilots, especially women pilots, who don't want to be gone all the time. It's nice to have the ability to make that change.
Dana, same question. As a aviation safety inspector, what's your favorite part about the job? What gets you excited to affect aviation safety positively?
So I have more of a passion for flight training. I mean, aviation safety is so important, and being able to have an impact. And I'm learning so much at this job as a general aviation safety inspector. We cover everything from all of the parts besides 121, basically. So I'm learning so many things. But working for the FAA, I'm hoping will give me the avenue to be able to make changes. I've got degrees in flight education, and I'm really hoping in the future to be able to have a big impact on the industry as a whole in the flight training community. So hoping with the FAA I can have a hand in that. Now I get to work with flight schools a lot and helping them write their course material and approving them as 141 or helping with surveillance and stuff. The coolest part of my job, the first week on the job, I got to do surveillance for the Capital City Air Show. So that was my welcome to the FAA. So that was pretty awesome. And then I've been able to meet so many awesome people doing my job too. So overall, it's been a lot of fun.
That's great. That's great. Now, I cannot end this without knowing more about designing airplanes for Reno. So, Josh, give me just a quick summary of this whole Reno adventure you're on.
Sure. Yeah. I fly. I race Formula One airplanes at Reno, and it's a stock class, so there's a lot of restrictions placed on engines, just to keep it all competitive. We want all the airplanes running pretty tight, and we want it to be affordable and approachable for people. So with all those tight restrictions, you have to get pretty creative with aerodynamics, and you're reducing drag to get an edge on somebody. So it's been a wild adventure. I started out as crew chief, got my first aircraft, and now I just got my second aircraft that we're constantly modifying to make faster. So we're hoping to do really well this year in September.
How long have you been doing it?
I got involved in 2018. A buddy of mine needed a crew chief to take the airplane to China to race. We race at Reno, but we also race internationally. So first time I saw the airplane was in China, rolling it out of the shipping container. So that was kind of my introduction to the maintenance side or the crew chief side of racing. And since then, well, last year was my first year racing. We had a COVID year, and then last year I was able to get up and actually run the pylons up in Reno, and it was amazing to be part of that show.
Wow, I'm sure that's incredible. It's like, if I can throw my nerd head on for a second, it's probably like the closest you can get to Star Wars pod racing, right?
Basically, yeah. I mean, with the wingtip to wingtip's 15 feet. You're doing from about 200 miles an hour, 50 feet off the ground in a tight closed course and in front of a whole crowd of people.
Wow.
So it's very exciting. There's not one extra inch of airplane because every square inch of wetted surface is more drag. So yeah, you're always right on the edge of control because any extra is drag.
Yeah, that's incredible. So for the listeners listening right now, just want to make sure you understand that this is open to you. This is open to anyone hearing this, open to anybody reading their articles. If you want to submit a question to a future Right Seat column, make sure you email them at rightseat@nafinet.org. as they've already explained, I think we've got the bases covered. And if a question does come down, they'll find somebody who can answer the question. But don't be afraid to ask, whatever it might be. And it doesn't have to be technical. It doesn't have to be your standard CFI, how do I teach this type of question? So get creative. I'd like to see, I want to see them get stumped a little bit. So, folks, any last minute comments you want to do before we call it the day?
I think that mostly covers it.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, I'm excited to see some questions come in and see if we can help people.
All right. Well, Dana, Jen, and Josh, thanks for joining us. And I can't wait to read your first article. And again, for those that haven't received the January, February edition, make sure that when you get it, find the right seat.